Hi everyone, I'm Lime Blossom. Back in college, one of my favorite things to do was game jams. I find them able to give a lot of experience in a short amount of time. The amount that you can learn from a game jam is amazing. Recently, I've decided to challenge myself. 2-hour game jams. This is my first one. I decided to go with a Chocobo-themed Temple Run game, as I thought it would be relatively easy. Basically, you're running down the road as a chocobo and you're trying to dodge cactuar. I knew I wouldn't have time to do my own art in a 2-hour challenge, so as a programmer, I decided to find some. You might be as surprised as I was to find that there was a chocobo game for the WonderSwan. So of course I gladly picked those up and threw them into Unity. Once I had my chocobo settled, I decided it was time to find a road. This wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. You'd think there'd be all kinds of free road textures, dirt paths, grassy knolls, but no, they're actually quite rare. What I ended up finding was a path texture for the game Worm Online. The user was just posting, suggesting, hey, maybe we can use something like this. Well, yes, that's quite nice actually. Thank you. And it turned out to be really nice. It was a perfectly aligned tile with no visible creases. So thank you, random user. You were quite helpful. Then I was like, hey, you know what we need? We need sound. How about music? How about chocobo music? Well, as I was streaming this, that didn't really work out for me, so I gave up on that in the meantime. I'll come back to that later. I imported some helper scripts so that I could prototype faster. These are scripts that I've made for other games. I call them programmatic animations. They do simple things like move at a constant rate in a certain direction, move up and down in a sine function, and most importantly, hey, if you're off the screen, destroy yourself. These scripts needed a little bit of cleaning up though. The last project that I used these scripts in introduced a number of message functions that no longer existed in this scope. The first thing that I set up was the eternally running road. Basically, there's a script that continuously generates a road every couple of seconds, and the roads are programmed to move downwards and then delete themselves. So now it was time for our arch enemy, the cactuar. I found these adorable little cactuar sprites on DeviantArt. The author of the sprites saying, feel free to use, I know bits of it are dodgy, lol, cactuar drawing that small is hard. You're right, Monster in a Box Incorporated. Drawing that small is hard. The cactuars follow a very similar method as the road. Get spawned and go down and then die. Of course, the one thing that the cactuars need that the road doesn't is collision with our chocobo, and we need 3 of them. I set it up so that when our chocobo moves left and right, it ends up on an even integer. This is a method that I use for prototyping faster. If your numbers are more solid, they'll be easier to work with. So I began working on the chocobo controller. The first mistake I make is using get button down instead of get key down. So I start looking in the input manager and trying to figure out why nothing's working, and of course, that's when I realize, oh right, get key, not get button. I'm using a keyboard. For this small of a project, I use what are called magic numbers. Magic numbers are what you call in programming numbers that really don't have a reason for being there other than they work. This script isn't actually a bad candidate for making into a more generic script of movement based on key entries. I'll consider converting it for my next project. And now it was time to set up collision. I struggled with this for a bit. For some reason, the collision wasn't doing anything, and I couldn't figure out why for a number of minutes. It was frustrating. I was on a very tight schedule. I tried switching from a collision to a trigger, but no, that didn't work either. But then, aha, that's it. It's a rigid body, doesn't it? Ah, of course. Well, everybody has a brain fart. Once my bodies were suitably rigid, I was thankful to see that, yes, every time I got hit by a cactuar, I died. We were making definite progress. This is basically a game. Hot dang. Oh, you know what though? It's awfully still for everybody moving around. I think it's time we added in our animation. I checked over the scripts that I imported, and I was looking for something that would do a very simple animation, back and forth, back and forth. I had something, but it was overly complicated and was not helpful at all. Well, that's okay. I love to make new scripts. Any little script that'll help me make a game faster in the future, I am all for it. Let's go. Thus we create the Flip Between Sprites class. Very simple, it just takes an array of sprites, and you tell it how fast you want to flip, and away it goes. I love making little scripts like this. They're simple, but very effective at things like prototyping. In a larger project, these would be a lot less effective. It's good to have a class that does one thing and does it well, but with the increased complexity of a larger project, a simple animation like this wouldn't work. If I had decided to add something like a jump animation to the Chocobo, well, now that would be competing with the flip back and forth animation that was already there. And since we're not using an animation controller, that means we would have to have our scripts communicate with each other. Well, a simple script is not very good for communication. However, because we made this simple script for the Chocobo, we were able to use it for the Cactuar as well. Then on stream we have a little distraction in the form of a Crabrave, but hey, nobody minds a Crabrave. And the game was looking good. So, it was time to start looking at a start scene. Something where the user is introduced to the game. It says, start or quit, settings. So for this I really wanted to have some music. A start scene without music is just so sad. One of my viewers actually says, "Hey, I can grab that for you." And I said, "Heck yeah, appreciate you." So I start on the start scene. I grab an image from the internet that just looks nice. I like it. It's pretty. So for the music, there's a thing that I remembered from previous game jams. You really want your music to be set up as a singleton. This means that when you switch scenes, your music doesn't start and stop, because that's jarring, annoying, and nobody likes that. Nice continuous music is a thing of beauty, so a singleton is what we need. So I make a quick singleton class. Basically all it says is, on start, if you find another game object with the same name as you, delete yourself. Then we need to put another script in that says do not destroy on load. This means that when you switch scenes, that object is persistent. As I was creating the start scene, I realized I didn't have a lot of time left. I had barely 30 minutes left, and I didn't have a game over scene yet. Yeah, the Chocobo could die, but you couldn't restart the game in any way. So I said, well, you know what? If I have time, we'll go back to the start screen. But right now, there's not enough time. So my quick throw together of an ending scene is this. I take the image of a sad Chocobo, I turn it into a button. If you click anywhere on the scene, it restarts the game. And I think, well, programming it so that it switches scenes is probably going to take a little bit longer than just having that as a canvas prefab that whenever I die, it gets thrown up. The Chocobo is killed, and then we just need a script that says, hey, you've been clicked, let's reload the game. Okay, last thing. The game is at a set difficulty right now, and we really want it to ramp up in difficulty over time. Otherwise, you'll probably never die. So at first I created a small script that would tell the spawners to spawn faster over time, but I realized that wasn't going to work. With how random the spawning logic was, you were likely to run into a no-win scenario, so instead I focused on a script that increased the speed of the Cactuar. They got faster as time went on, and now we had some challenge. And with that, I was out of time. I hope you enjoyed this little 2-hour adventure. I certainly did, and I plan to continue doing this in the future. Let's take a look at the final result. There's so much more that I wanted to add to this project. Jumping, gliding, Gysahl greens, other kinds of power-ups, other kinds of obstacles. What would you have liked to see? If you're interested in seeing me do another 2-hour game jam, I'll be live on Twitch. Thank you for watching, and good night. If you enjoyed this little presentation, please leave a like. I'm very new and I could really use the support. Thank you.